Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting for the town of Quispamsis for Tuesday, August 8th. Second item on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Mark?
So move.
Can I have a seconder on that? Mark?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can we vote on that, please?
First one always takes a while. Brent?
Motion's carried unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item 3, disclosures of interest. Any? None being. With that, we'll move on to item 4, approval of previous minutes. Any adjustments to the previous minutes? None being. Can we have a motion to accept the previous minutes? Mr. Bishop?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that? Kendall?
I'll second it.
Thank you. That being, can we have a vote, please?
No? It's up here.
Motion carried unanimously. That will move on to item 5, business arising from minutes. Can we have a motion? Can I have a motion to receive and file, please? Mark? So moved. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Mr. Bishop?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can we have a vote for that, please? Motion carried unanimously. That being, moved on to item number 6, unfinished business. None being, we'll move on to item 7, new business. Item 7A. Could the applicant please come up to the podium and state their name for the record? In the meantime, we'll get Jennifer to introduce that item at 193 Pettingill Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening before you is an application to approve a daycare at 193 Pettingill Road. Section 21B1C states that a daycare in an institutional zone is a permitted use, but as a discretionary use for PAC to set terms and conditions. 6L3 of zoning bylaw 38 outlines a list of provisions that are required to be met for a daycare over 15 children. Section 12D1B states that no main building or structure may be placed, erected, or altered so that it's within 6 meters of a side lot line. And 6E1I states allows for projection of up to 1.2 meters into a side yard. The subject lot has 6,317 square meters. A daycare, as I said, is permitted as a discretionary use. The construction is of a new building. It is to support 45 new children and 13 new staff members. 6C1 does allow for more than one main building on a lot that is not in an R1 or an RU zone, so that would be permitted in this case. The applicants have retained the services of Donmore Survey and Engineering Limited for their stormwater management plan and civil design. We haven't yet received the final package for the stormwater management plan. That would need to be assessed by our engineering department and be accepted by them prior to the issuance of any building permits or development permits to the lot. It will be serviced by sanitary sewer, municipal sanitary sewer, and a new on-site drilled well. And the parking arrangement is 1 space for every 5 children and 1 parking stall for each employee. We looked at the overall parking plan for the entire organization, and we found it to be acceptable. We, however, will require a revised site plan that will identify a 3rd barrier-free parking stall, as the requirements are such it would need 3 barrier-free parking stalls, and it provides for 2 at this time. It exceeds all setbacks except for the side yard setback, and it is the projection of the decks that actually encroach into that sideline. Now, you are permitted by section 61 to project 1.2 meters. We're actually asking to project 2.85 meters, so we will require a 1.65 meter variance to that section. The only concerns I had was a review of the overall plan. Shows that where currently is located a play area, that is being converted to parking space. So I did not see another area that was identified for parking, or for a play area. And section 6M1 does require for schools or daycares that a sufficient play area outdoors be provided. And concerns, we received no concerns from the public on this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you, Jennifer. Could the applicant please state your name for the record, please?
Good evening, my name is Erin Scryer.
Aaron, you would receive the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to discuss or talk about prior to members of the PAC or members of the public asking you some questions?
No, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for your time and attention to the application, for Jennifer's time and Violet. No, Jennifer, my business partner is Jennifer Arsenault, and she's here this evening as well. We've both reviewed the staff report and didn't have any questions, but certainly any questions or curiosities you have, I'd be pleased to answer.
All right, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? I guess I have one for myself. One of the questions that Jennifer mentioned was about the play area for the children. Has that been decided on where that's going to be located now, or what's going to happen with that?
Yes, so the one that will move to meet the needs of the existing building can go right beside the building, and I'll put that in a revised site plan for Jennifer. So there's lots of space there for that. The new building, the decks actually count as the outside play area for licensing by the Department of Education, so we have that as an option. But we also have acreage kind of behind the parking stalls, and it's a fenced-in area that's come to PAC before that we call Rockwall Cove. So there's more than ample space in that area as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of PAC to the applicant? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Kendall.
I recommend the Planning Advisory Committee approve the daycare use at 193 Pettingill Road, providing childcare services to 45 children subject to compliance with the conditions of Section 6L3 of the town's zoning bylaw 038 and any other conditions. It's recommended that such additional conditions include: number one, the applicant obtains appropriate licensing from the province of New Brunswick for the operation of a child care center in New Brunswick. Number two, a revised site plan identifying a 3rd barrier-free stall is received by the town. Number three, a revised site plan identifying a fenced-in play area is received by the town. Number 4, development permits and building permits are issued by the town prior to any construction. Number 5, the daycare center complies with requirements of the provincial fire marshal's office. Number 6, the owner operator enters into a development agreement with the town for the new daycare center. Number 7, review and acceptance of the stormwater management plan by the town's engineering department is required prior to the issuance of any building permits. Number 8, a sanitary sewage permit is issued by the town as per the sewage utility bylaw. And number 9, the development is completed and operates in accordance with all town bylaws, provincial acts, and applicable policies thereto.
Thank you, Kendall. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Brent?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions on the motion? None being, can we have a vote on that, please? That motion's carried unanimously. The next 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail with your approval. So please work with the town to have all necessary documentation and paperwork in place, and best of luck. You're welcome. With that being, we'll move on to item 7B. 1 Old Neck Road, PID 00441659 for a setback. Could the applicant please come up for the podium? And while the applicant's on his way up, Jennifer, can you introduce us to that item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a case of a resident wanting to build where the street line is also a sideline. So in that case, he is in the rural on a lot with the area of 4,635 square meters. Section 25F1 states where a lot has or contains more than 5,000 square meters. Oh, so that contains less than 5,000 square meters. The sections 8G to 8I will apply. So that brings us to the required variance, which will be to section 8G1B2. It's requesting a 1.5 meter side yard lot line setback. The applicant is proposing to build a 72.4 square meter detached garage. The maximum permitted gross floor area for a detached garage in our bylaw is 63 square meters. Therefore, we'll also require a variance to section 8G1C. There is a street, a street redevelopment design that was planned to happen this year in the area. However, that's been postponed. I did speak with engineering regarding this street upgrade, just to ensure that it wouldn't be impacted by what is being proposed here this evening. I did speak with Mark Morrison, the manager of engineering, and he and I reviewed the plans and looked at the drawings. The area where the change is happening is more towards the stop sign and is not going to be impacted towards the rear of the lot or as you go further down Old Neck Road. So when Mark and I looked at where the proposed garage was going, it was not going to be impacted at all by the new street design. So I just wanted to let the committee know that. So I'm sorry, it's actually 3.2 meter setback that we're looking for, because he's been able to provide a 4.3 meter setback to the lot line. One letter was received from the public, and they indicated that they had no concerns with the proposed development. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Could the applicant, could you please state your name for the record, please?
Daryl Thompson.
Mr. Thompson, you would have received the same package we did in the mail. Anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of PAC or members of the public asking you some questions?
Not right offhand, no.
Okay, thank you. With that being, any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Preston.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion, the Planning Advisory Committee approve the 4.3 meters side yard setback from the town zoning bylaws section, or 038 section 8G 1B 2, and approve the 9.4 square meter variance to section 8G 1C of the same bylaw and permit the construction of detached garage at 10 Neck Road, PID 00441659, subject to the following terms and conditions. 1, the side lot line is clearly defined prior to construction. If the property pins are not identifiable, a professional surveyor licensed by the province of New Brunswick must be hired to locate and mark the property line. 2, a building permit is obtained prior to any construction. 3, the exterior finish of the garage is to be cladding recognized by the National Building Code of Canada, current adopted edition. 4, the building is not to be used for business purposes. And 5, the building is not to be used for the keeping of livestock or as a dwelling.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Mr. Guest?
I'll second that.
Any questions on the motion? None being, can we have a vote, please? That motion's carried unanimously in 5 to 7 business days. You have a letter in the mail with your approval, so please work with the town to have all necessary documentation and paperwork in place, and best of luck. Thank you very much. You're welcome. That being, we'll move on to item 7C, 80 Millennium Drive. Could the applicant please come up to the podium? And Jennifer, do you want to introduce that item first, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As committee members recall, the applicant was before us, I think about 6 months ago. It was December 19th. So this is an application to request an increase to the number of dogs permitted to attend the doggy daycare at 80 Millennium Drive, to also introduce dog training classes. And I believe there is, an unaltered, yes. So the bylaw, Section 3C states, in prescribing the purpose of which land, buildings, structures may be used, the Planning Advisory Committee may, where so empowered, in this bylaw impose terms and conditions or may prohibit such uses where compliance with those terms and conditions cannot reasonably be expected. And the terms and conditions so imposed should be limited to those considered necessary by the PAC to protect properties within the zone or in abutting zones, or the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. So in December of 2022, the Planning Advisory Committee approved the doggy daycare and retail store. They approved the doggy daycare for 25 dogs permitted on site at any time, 7 dogs permitted outside at any one time. They were operating hours Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 9 to 5, closed on Sunday. We also requested a letter from the Fundy Regional Service Commission for waste management. We also imposed restrictions on the fenced-in area, and we requested a fence permit. We've received from the applicant a letter along with the application to request this addition of dogs from 25 to 40, and that's a 38% increase. They also want the after-hours training classes, 2 classes a night with up to 6 dogs per class. And they would like to introduce care spots for unaltered puppies and they've requested the removal of the restriction on the number of dogs permitted to be outside at any one time. The applicant has also I just read that, sorry. There were many concerns raised at the meeting in December regarding the number of dogs permitted outside. We haven't received any noise complaints from the public regarding the barking from this location. However, this may be a direct relation to the restriction on the number of dogs permitted outside. So staff recommend, in the interest of the neighboring public, that the restriction on the dogs permitted outside at any time be changed to that of 10, and the number of dogs to 10 is a reflection of the increase in the number of dogs, so it's sort of a ratio. It's a 38% increase in the number of dogs permitted outside. The applicants indicated they've received a tremendous amount of support from the community. They have provided examples of that in the package for the committee. And staff are recommending that a condition of approval be that permits be sought for any alteration to the interior of the building. There's some indication that there is going to be some changes to the floor plan, so we would need to have permits issued for that. And there is nothing in the town bylaws that speaks to unaltered dogs. There's no distinction between a young pup and an older dog, so I think the number of dogs that are permitted will be inclusive of puppies or adult dogs. The applicants have full support of the landowner. We've received 3 letters of concern and 1 letter of support. The letters of concern were surrounding noise and traffic. One actually went on to speak about health concerns in relation to the noise. And the letter of support was very similar to those that were found in the Facebook messaging. So we did do a site visit. We did 3 site visits. Staff went on site, and the first time that we were there, no barking was observed. There were 15-minute segments that we went out, in fairness, but we went out 15 minutes, didn't hear any barking, went back the next day at a different time, 15 minutes, few dogs barking, but that sound was drowned out by the sound of the highway and the construction that's happening on site. And a third time was visited, spent another 15 minutes, and no dogs were observed at that time. But one question that the members may wish to ask is regarding the outdoor space, is if there are any plans to increase that space to meet the increase in the dogs. And other than that, I have no further concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Could you please state your name for the record?
Sure. I'm Julie Holmes.
I'm Cream Wood.
Okay, thank you. You both would have received the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to add or discuss prior to members of the PAC or members of the public asking you some questions?
Sure. Thank you to the members of PAC to having us tonight again. Thank you for doing. Is that better? Thank you for putting together a great staff report. It was, it included just about everything that we had asked for, and it was great. And I'm glad that members of PAC actually came and did some site visits. I think we had one tonight as well. Was it Mr. Goslin? We encourage that. We want to work with the town, and we want to make sure that we're following the rules and that we're pleasing, and you know. So the reasons for our ask, as you can see from some of the submissions that we have sent with our report, was that we have gotten an overwhelming response from the town and a lot of support from the town. One of the reasons about puppies, and it's not necessarily that we won't take them because there is no bylaw for that. It was my own saying, I don't know if, you know, the owners are going to understand when their dog is in heat. And am I going to get caught in a puppy mill? I don't want any of that. But we have ways to mitigate that with keeping them as a puppy and then having them progress into our daycare which will be just the 40 amount anyway, once they're altered. We know when they need to be altered. Some vets don't want them to be altered until they're about a year, but at that time, if they're not willing to do it earlier, we have to stop it once a dog is in heat, because dogs will have puppies. When it comes to noise, again, yes, dogs will bark from time to time. Sometimes when the work trucks go by, we do know our dogs. We know who could be a howler. Crean actually manages the store and the daycare and does a phenomenal job. We're all first aid trained. I'm a trainer. The staff get basic training to know how to handle dogs and what to do when you're in that situation. Because again, we want to have a good relationship with the residents and with the town itself. And then with the training, like I said, I'm a trainer, so I want to be able to offer that service. We've been asked multiple times for that as well. One question I did have was, I'm also a groomer, so I wanted to know if we want to do grooming, and it's not altering our space at all. We have the space for it already. There's 2 washrooms, large washrooms, because it was a yoga room prior to. We don't need to do anything. Everything's modular. My equipment's modular. Do we have to ask that if it's within the store hours? We're not going outside of the store hours. There's no additional dogs coming in just to get groomed and out. Not sure if that's something that we have to put in as a variance as well. So that's one thing you may want to think about, because I would like to do that as well. The last thing I just want to say is that, we've done our best to mitigate any noise. We've never heard any complaints. We do not need to do any construction within our store where we're shrinking the storefront. We don't have to do any construction in the back of the dog daycare because all of our systems are modular. So when we house puppies in the front store, it's a modular unit. You move it to block them in the way that we want to. We have fake grass in there, we have pools, we have bubble machines, we have everything for dogs to play inside as well as outside. We won't be expanding the fence yard. There's no need to. It's actually quite large back there when you're standing inside of it. You could probably fit 25 to 30 dogs out there comfortably, and they can still run around and be in their pools. So that's really all I think I need to say at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Goslin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. First of all, I was there tonight and I was impressed. It's very, very clean and I was happy to see that.
Thank you.
Second thing, the extended hours, is that for the whole operation or just for the training at
This is
nighttime?
training.
So after 6 o'clock, there's only going to be 6 dogs maximum.
So what will happen is, and I did put it in there, but they're 45-minute training sessions. So one will be at 6 to 6:45. I'll take a little break and then I'll start the next one. And there's only 6 dogs during, and that's at max because I don't know if I'm going to get 6 dogs in a training session or not. It might be only 2. So it'll be between probably 1 to 6 that'll train in the first little 45-minute session, and then the other one, and we'll end at 8 o'clock and make sure we're all out and locked up. And that'll be 2 nights a week. I don't know the nights yet. I haven't even started to filter out what nights would be work best for clients, but it'll only be the 2 nights.
But they will have to use the outside facilities also?
Nope.
Or have access to the outside
We
facility?
do not train outside.
So how about if they need to go to the washroom?
Well, any dog can walk out around that area, even with us.
My concern was having dog after 6 o'clock outside.
Yeah.
Is that an issue or that's not, so you will not have?
No, what we ask the clients always is just like when you go to the dog groomer, if anybody has dogs, they'll ask to have the dogs use the washroom before they even come into the facility.
Okay.
We provide bags and all that to keep our area clean as well, because like I said, there's workers that sit there that the first week of August actually had a big white dog that sat outside of his van barking all day. So we were trying to move our dogs in because I was like, we're going to get the blame for this. It's not us. So we even clean up their messes because we don't want anybody to think that we're leaving anything behind. So there's no use to be outside in our gated area or even hanging out in the front
So
area.
would you be okay if we say that we approve the extended hours to 8 o'clock, but the outside area can only be open until 6?
That's correct.
Would you be okay? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Goslin.
Mr. Chairman, I'll put a recommendation that the Planning Advisory Committee approve an increase in the number of permitted dogs on site at any one time from 25 to 40 and permit the addition of dog training classes at 80 Millennium Drive, PID number 173435, with consideration of the following condition. Number one, a maximum of 40 dogs be permitted to be on site at any one time and inclusive of all dogs regardless of age. The number of dogs permitted outside at any one time would be limited to 10. Dog training classes shall be permitted and must be done within the confines of the building and must end at 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Permit from the town of any alteration to the interior of the building must be issued prior to construction. And I would add number 5, that the outside area is to be closed after 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Goslin. Can I have a seconder on that? Mr. Bishop?
I'll second that.
Thank you. I just have one thing. What about that grooming? Is that, Jennifer, can you answer that?
That would be considered incidental to the main use.
Thank you. Any debate on that motion? Oh, Brent?
So my only question to the owner applicant, is this a separate business? Yes.
It all falls under.
It's all under one? Okay.
Thank you. Any debate on the motion? None being, can we have a vote, please? That motion's carried unanimously in 5 to 7 business days. You'll have the letter in the mail with approval. Please work at the town, have all necessary documentation in place, and best of luck, and hopefully the neighbors all appreciate that at the end of the day, what you're doing.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great evening.
That being, we'll move on to item 7D, 18 McMahon Lane, PID 303-53635, McMahon subdivision. Could the applicant come up to the podium, please? And Jennifer, or do you want to introduce that, or Dwight, you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before we get to the next item, just a note regarding the previous application. We would have to check, and just for the record and to put into the minutes, maybe an adjustment to the motion would be if they have a development agreement that has specific terms and conditions related to the previous approval, then that development agreement will have to be adjusted to reflect the current ask and the recommendations of Planning Advisory Committee. So just a note to make sure that that gets
Thank
carried
you.
forward.
Thank you, Dwight. We're okay with that? Yep. Okay. Jennifer, you want to introduce that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're looking at a subdivision for one lot, and that is off of McMahon Lane, 18 McMahon Lane. They're requesting one new residential RU building lot. In 2007, this parcel was much bigger. And to the northeast of the lot, subject lot this evening, there's a large piece of land, 45.5 acres of land to be specific, that was at one time owned by Riverfront Properties. And they had made some arrangements with Mr. McMahon, a land swap, so they could gain access from Elliott Road to their lands for development. so a future street could be provided at that location. And the road was to be developed by those that would benefit from the road, and that, of course, would have been Riverfront Properties, who have since sold their interests in the property. So Mr. McMahon is wanting to develop or to subdivide a building lot to sell off, and we have a future street that now has 3 potential lots accessing off of it, which now brings us into sort of NB 911 territory, where we have to pay attention to policies that require a named lane access where there are more than three or more residents accessing. So it's recommended by staff, a condition of approval be that the future street is named and brought to an acceptable standard, allowing emergency services unobstructed passage, and that passage be a hard surface. Civic numbering has become a challenge along Elliott Road, and because of that, we are requesting that any lots that gain access from this future street have civic numbers reassigned as required by MB 911 policy, meaning they would have to be civic numbered off of the future street and no longer off of Elliott Road. The proposed lot would be serviced on on-site septic and an on-site well. The lot frontage of 54 meters is required. The proposed lot has 38.7 meters. We did receive a different iteration of the subdivision plan, which did provide the lot frontage. However, it did not provide an access down into the lands that fall south of the subject lot and for future development. So staff feel that it's very important that a future access point be provided at that location in case future development does occur on those lands. So therefore, the variance that's requested to reduce the lot frontage is considered minor, and the lot area that's required is achieved. So we ask that the committee grant that variance. It's a 15.3 meter variance to section 25F2. One concern that we received was regarding the naming of the naming and civic numbering of the future street, that the letter expressed that the town be made responsible for maintenance of the future street, including snow clearing and garbage pickup. Staff assure PAC members that the town will take full responsibility of the future street once it is brought to municipal standards as found in subdivision bylaw number 35. Staff have no other concerns with this.
Thank you, Jennifer. Could the applicant please state their name for the record, please?
Hi, I'm Matt Blaine. This is Bill McMahon here.
Bill McMahon and Matt Blaine. You would receive the same package we did in the mail. Is there anything you'd like to discuss or talk about prior to members of PAC or members of the public asking you questions?
I'm gonna let him do the talk.
Okay.
Yes. We have a little brief presentation here just to touch on a couple points. It should be pretty quick that we can run through. So we'll start there. Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, members of the public. My name is Matt Blaine. I work for Hughes Surveys and Consultants Incorporated, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the landowners for this proposed subdivision. Upon review of the staff report, which you received, we are in agreement in principle. There's only one small deviation that we are seeking, and it's a little bit to do with the definition of the hard packed surface. Within the zoning bylaws, it's defined as certain specifications or certain types of material, but in the National Building Code, it's a little more open-ended, that it really can be just any suitable material that will permit accessibility under all climatic conditions. So it just gears it back a little bit to have a little bit more flexibility to choose while still meeting that building code and the requirements that are in it. It just a small change in the wording from perhaps the hard packed surface to just a suitable surface that allows accessibility under all climatic conditions would be preferred for your consideration. So we can switch to the next slide. While we're here, on behalf of Bill and Tanya, we submitted a subdivision plan, an application to the town proposing the creation of Lot 2302. Lot 2302 is situated off of Elliott Road in a rural unserviced portion of Quispamsis. As discussed in the staff report, Lot 2302 meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw for both lot area and lot depth. Upon further review with staff and consultation, it was determined that providing an access strip to the remnant of the property was of value to preserve future development options. So that being said, we've adjusted the lot to allow that future access, and for that, a variance for lot width would be required. And that's good. As you would have noted in your PAC packages, there's been ongoing discussions pertaining to this area dating back to 2007. The adjacent property, shown in blue up on the screen, was owned by Riverfront Properties, as discussed. This piece of land had high development potential. However, it only fronted on French Village Road and was bordered by the McMahon property in the back, highlighted in orange. So it was determined that this property would benefit from a secondary point of access. Therefore, a land swap ensued. A future street, shown in black on the attached sketch, was created from the McMahon property to benefit the Riverfront property. In exchange, a portion of the Riverfront property was carved off and transferred to the McMahon property. That was shown in pink on the attached sketch. In this slide, you can see the future street here. It was created in 2007, as we discussed, and invested in the municipality. The land is able to be upgraded to a public street at any point if the adjacent development moves forward. Until such time, we are asking to continue utilizing it as a private access, as it should not impact its future use. Some precedent or something to look back on. The town and its solicitor have already done the legwork in regard to what needs to be included in a hold harmless agreement to allow this private access over a future street or land dedicated as a future street. So we would just be looking to follow in the footsteps of what happened in 2009 when they went through this very same process. In summary, we believe this is a good opportunity for an infill development. The housing market has changed considerably since 2009, and when looking through the glasses of 2023, being able to provide housing opportunities should rank high on the priority list. This specific proposal would allow for an additional dwelling unit to be created within the town. It would allow for the tax base to increase without needing to extend the public street network, and it will still leave the allowance for future development of the adjacent parcel as originally intended. So with that, I think that should outline what we're looking for tonight, and if you have any questions, we'd love to try and answer them for you.
Thank you. One question for the town, Dwight or Jennifer, with respect to the request, is that the hard pack, does that come out of our bylaws? It's different than National Building Code? Is that how that's, what or Dwight, or someone want to take that? Go ahead, Dwight.
So it's made reference to in the zoning bylaw, what hard pack surface is. So it does give, it's in reference to parking facilities for mainly commercial properties. So it just lists some examples of what hard surface could be. So they get into asphalt, concrete, chip seal. But obviously, Planning Advisory Committee has the authority, given any situation, to review those requirements and approve additional services, which they have. In some cases, not all businesses in the municipality do have paved driveways or paved parking lots. but that's gone through a PEC process. So what it comes down to is, in terms of the National Building Code, it does say any surface that is suitable under climatic conditions. So it's looking at, can that surface provide safe and efficient access to these properties under any given condition, reasonably speaking. Okay, so any reasonable effort to maintain them, that would reflect that level of effort. So it's making sure that it isn't muddy and ruddy, and you can access it in the spring of the year, and that if it's ice conditions, obviously there's appropriate materials applied, whether that's salt or gravel, to ensure there's sufficient access, right? Snow plowing, all those elements that would be considered maybe an obstacle to access. So if the surface itself can demonstrate, that those types of things, then it's up to PAC to establish that as a requirement of approval if they were to move that along that line. I guess if you really want to look at it, not all roads in the province, are paved. There are some cases where there are actually granular surfaces and they operate perfectly. So it comes down to the maintenance and upkeep and a clear understanding who's responsible for that. And that when property owners, if there are challenges, they're not coming to the town and say you're responsible to maintain it. That's why there is an alarmist agreement in place. And as pointed out in staff report, once it comes to a municipal standard, should there be further development or whatever happens in the future, then yes, the town would take it over, and the town would not take it over until it was brought to that specific municipal standard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Dwight, so that would have to be shared with that new property. If a dwelling gets built in that new lot, that would have to be shared with that owner, indicating that, hey, this is not a municipal street at this point in time. They can leave it as it is until, or they got to bring it up in order to do that.
Yeah, so it would be brought up to a minimum of the National Building Code requires, and our local fire department has clearly indicated, these types of surfaces they want access, they want to see at least a minimum of 6 meter wide driving surface.
Okay.
And that would obviously be reflected in an amending whole harmless agreement, which would be applicable to this particular development.
Okay,
So
thank you.
That's the main focus, is 6 meter driving surface, and the driving surface is something that they can access without obstruction.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, you don't have anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one of the recommended conditions is that this be approved by the fire department. So they will have a say on the finished product, whether it's acceptable to them or not.
Mr. Bishop.
I guess that was just gonna be my question, is what is considered an approved surface, I guess, for the fire department on this type of roads? We don't know that at this point, I'm guessing. That they were gonna say that they want it to be done, however, whether it's chip seal or whatever, do we know what that requirement from the fire department is? I guess that would be my question.
I really don't. What I would fall back to is the National Building Code requirements of the 6 meter wide hard surface.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bishop, or Dwight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's what they defer to. In past, when we had these conversations, they've always gone back to this particular section of the National Building Code with respect to providing access. So that's what they defer to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bishop, you okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Bishop? Okay.
I guess so what we're stating in our conditions is that the future street to be minimum 6 meter wide, hard surface lane, and comply with the requirements of the National Building Code and be approved by the Quispamsis Fire Department. So that is a requirement for this lot, or that is the requirement for it to be then brought up to town standard?
That is the recommendation and requirement for the approval of this lot, recognizing that it is a private access to be maintained by the property owners. The town would always default back to the subdivision specs, which says that if you're vesting the access to the town and the town's to own it and maintain it, then you're going into 8-meter driving surface, shoulders, asphalt, all those types of things before the town would take it over. And that is at the expense of the developer or property owner, not at the expense of the town prior to taking it over.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone online or in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? I can't. Oh, come on up. I can't. Couldn't see you. Sorry. No, come on right up. You two gentlemen sit down. Could you please state your name for the record?
Lisa Vanook.
Lisa Vanook, okay.
Yeah. I'm here on behalf of my parents who couldn't be here tonight. They live on Elliott Road, which is the property to the left of the red block. My question is, you're talking about the roadway. Are they going to be responsible for the upkeep and making sure that that's, and I apologize to be ignorant because I really don't know. Is that going to be their responsibility? Or is that the town?
What lot are you referring to on there?
Well, the main road that they're talking about, which will be a new road because of civic numbers. Because there's 2 houses right now that share that little lane. That's my parents' place right there.
The second one in?
Yes. Yeah.
Jennifer?
So in this particular case, the recommendation that's before PAC is that prior to issuing a development permit or the building permit for that particular lot, which is being sought, that this particular driveway has to be brought up to the standard. The whole armors agreement is going to be specific to the new lot. Okay, so the responsibility will be associated with that particular lot. Okay, if Mr. McMahon wishes to enter into an agreement with the new property owner and existing property owners to get into cost sharing arrangements, then that's something outside of this particular whole armors agreement. The whole armors agreement that we will be creating will be against the new lot, and it's that new lot owner that ultimately would be responsible for bringing that up, maintaining it to that standard.
Beyond that lot, or where they are today?
So it's
Currently, what happens today in her case as who looks after it currently?
My parents.
Okay.
So this is where we get into the whole armors agreement. We're looking at complete access, making sure that the access right from the Elliott Road is capable all the way into that particular property, right? Again, whether they get into cost sharing arrangements and those types of things, that's outside of the scope of what a whole armors agreement states. We simply say that the property owner is responsible to maintain the access. Okay? So if it's shared, then that's what it comes down to.
Did that answer your question?
Somewhat, yes, thank you.
You okay?
Yeah, I am. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
I appreciate that.
Could the applicants please come up to the podium? Okay, third and final time, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? That being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put forward the motion that Planning Advisory Committee approve a 15.3 meter variance to section 25F2 of zoning bylaw number 038 and support the development officer in approving the tentative plan, that of McMahon subdivision for one lot not fronting on a municipal street from the parcel identified as 18 McMahon Lane, PID 3035-3635, with consideration of the following terms and conditions. Number 1, the future street is to be named and all driveways gaining accesses off the future street are to be civic numbered accordingly. Number 2, the future street is to be a minimum 6-meter wide hard surface lane that comply with the requirements of the National Building Code and be approved by the Kennebecasis Fire Department. Number 3, the access is to be of hard surface that complies with the requirements of the National Building Code so it can be maintained and provide unobstructed access to emergency service providers. Number 4, maintenance of the future street will only become the responsibility of the town once it is brought up to municipal standards. Until such time, snow clearing and hard surface maintenance will be the shared responsibility of those accessing their property from the future street. Number 5, garbage pickup service for properties on the future street will be collected from Elliott Road. Number 6, an amendment to the hold harmless agreement be executed prior to the issuing of development and building permits to lot 23-2. And number 7, LPP requirements satisfied in the form of cash in lieu, $750.
Thank you, Mr. Guest. Can I have a seconder on that, please? Mr. Bishop?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any debate on the motion? None being, can we, Violet?
Can I just clarify if the town is responsible for any of the cost-sharing agreements that was noted in that last condition, or number 4? Would that be part of the hold harmless agreement, or is that up to Mr. McMahon before he sells the lots? Sort of like a condominium act we've done on other private streets, but we've made that part of our agreement. I'm just wondering if that's something that we need to address in that condition.
I'm sorry, Violet, I'm not quite comprehending what you're trying to say to me.
No, it's number 4. Until such time, snow clearing and hard surface maintenance will be the shared responsibility of those accessing their property from the future street. At this point, there's only one person that's on that. We're adding a second one, and the gentleman from 105 Elliott has been accessing off that as well. So now there's 3. Is it the town's responsibility to make any cost-sharing agreements? Or is that up to the sale and purchase of the land?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the town does not cost share in any upkeep, snow clear, maintenance of these private streets, private access.
No, I know that. I'm just wondering if that goes in any agreement.
It goes in the whole harmless agreement. The whole harmless agreement will say that any investment into maintaining, to constructing, maintaining the private access is not to be recouped through the town should it be constructed to a municipal standard. And if it becomes a municipal standard, that is on the expense of the developer or whoever undertakes that work.
But is the hold harmless going to be for all 3 of the properties accessing that? I guess that would clarify it for me.
The current hold harmless agreement will be going against that particular PID.
Only the one.
Because as it currently states, the existing property owner would be carrying on with the level of effort that they would be currently doing. And since there's an access already there, they're maintaining it, plowing it. It's making sure that the access width and is constructed to access this new lot is 6 meters wide. That cost would be borne against this particular new property, because if this new property wasn't before PAC, we would not be having this discussion. So if that's the request to create this lot, then the approval is subject to these conditions, which is upgrading it and appropriate maintenance on that particular lot, under the responsibility of that new lot owner.
Okay.
I guess I still question the need for that condition of the cost sharing. It's just, it sounds like the cost is all on this lot we're approving. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, because the current property owner is not present and didn't get into any particular negotiations to creating this lot, to my knowledge. This is a request of the existing property owner, Mr. McMahon, asking to create these lots. He's come to Planning Advisory Committee, said, will you approve it? It does in front of Municipal Street. Planning Advisory Committee has the authority to say yes. However, here's the list of conditions. So here's the list of conditions for this particular lot. And one of those is a whole harmless agreement that clearly states the recommendations that have been presented through this motion. as I had noted, if that property owner wishes to canvass or go to the adjacent property owners and say, can we get into some sort of cost sharing arrangement and all those types of things to reduce, the cost on everybody, that is outside the scope of this particular approval.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop?
So my question is that Mr. McMahon is basically the one that's getting the revenue from this lot. Why is, so he sells it to this homeowner unbeknownst to them, whether they know whether the road needs to be upgraded or not? I guess that's where I have a problem with some of these private lanes, is that if he's the one that owns the land and he's the one that's selling the lot, and it has to be brought up to this standard, then it should be brought up to that standard by the person that owns the property before he sells the property. So he would be responsible to upgrade that street from Elliott Road into the end. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that goes back to it goes back to outside of the scope of this discussion, because if I were in a hypothetical situation, one of my questions about that lot would be, the access, who's responsible to maintain that? So if I'm the purchaser and the person says, that's your responsibility, that would probably get into negotiations of how much I'm actually paying for that lot if I've got to build up the road, versus does the owner of the land build it and put it on the cost of the lot? So it comes down to how it's presented and put on for a sale, ultimately.
And that's a check. Mr. Chair. So, so I guess in the deed or in somewheres that will be specified that, who's gonna bring the lot up. He gets a deal on it, he pays for it. If he doesn't get a deal on it, the owner of the property pays for it. And it would be from Elliott Road to that lot.
That is
The whole
correct.
thing upgraded, not just from the start of the new lot to the end of.
That is
the
correct, because if you were to erase out the existing lot that is there, and if that application was coming to us tonight with that existing home not there, we'd be trading in the same manner. How are you getting access to that lot straight from the Elliott Road all the way in? And that note would go on the subdivision plan, and it would go in the whole harmless agreement, which would get registered against that particular property.
Okay, I would like to also add to the conditions that once the future property, I guess where you've allowed for a future street or future development, if any future development is brought to that space, that the road be brought up to the National Building Code standard. So an actual street, 20-meter wide, paved, in order to support to come into that new property. The whole street would be brought up to municipal standard. I'd like that added as condition number 8.
Mark, good?
Yeah, so I think, that was, there was a concept plan showing
Yes.
some development. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who's the seconder on that? Yeah, okay, Darren, sorry, yep, okay. Do you want to speak there for a second?
Just to add on to Dwight's point and to clarify kind of the confidence in the system, is that hold harmless agreement gets registered on Service New Brunswick against the PID, and at that point, any lawyer or anyone transferring a property, that hold harmless is staring them right in the face, so they can see whatever terms and conditions are imposed. So any sale of a property, including the previous property that was sold, 121, it has a hold harmless agreement registered against it. So they're actually responsible for maintenance and plowing of that future street, not the town. And like you were saying, for this application, we're required to upgrade the street to, or we'll call it a driveway, to differentiate to 6 meters wide to access this rear lot. And that would be borne by the cost of this development for this lot, whereas the future maintenance and plowing and everything is still individually carried by those hold harmless agreements for everybody that fronts on that driveway. They'll individually all have hold harmless agreements, or they do, and the future one would, so that everybody's aware that they require payment. It's not a public road that they're going to require maintenance and street plowing. It's just that in this specific case, the National Building Code's requiring it to be upgraded. So it would have to be upgraded from Elliott Road to the rear lot that we're proposing today to satisfy those requirements.
Okay, thank you. No further debate. Can we have a vote on that, please? A motion carried unanimously. 5 to 7 business days, you'll have a letter in the mail. Please work with the town, have all necessary paperwork and documentation in place, and work with your neighbors, and best of luck. You're welcome. That being, we'll move on to item 7E, Gondola Point Park. Could the applicant please come up to the podium, state your name for the record? None here. Is that going to be internal for Dwight? Dwight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the PAC committee. So the application that's before the Planning Advisory Committee has been brought through Planning Advisory Committee through the subdivision application process. It is a plan that was before the Planning Advisory Committee previously. The initial plan was for the creation of 16 lots. So phase 12A, we created 10 of them. So this is the remainder of that particular tentative plan. It was not registered prior to the 1 year timeframe, so therefore it's back before the Planning Advisory Committee to sort of reaffirm the conditions that were previously set and to allow for the Planning Advisory Committee to provide any recommendations to the development officer prior to going to council for assent. In this particular case, what's being sought is a couple of variances for lots 18C and 19C. They were previously approved. It's a half a meter variance. In this particular case, it's the lot width variance. The actual depth provides for more than sufficient lot area. All lots are serviced by municipal sewer. They will front a public street, an extension of Sheridan Avenue, so to close that connection. Water service is obviously individual wells. All the infrastructure has been put in place. The design was done by Dalmore Surveys and inspected accordingly, with the plans being reviewed by Town Engineering Department and designated release for construction, and subsequent inspections have been completed by the consulting engineer as well as in collaboration with the Town's Engineering Department. From a planning perspective, it was previously approved. Again, that 1 year lapse and occurred prior to registration of the remnant of the tentative plan. So at this point in time, I'm looking for PAC's recommendations or comments to allow for approval, and then obviously subsequent assent of council prior to final plan registration.
Thank you, Dwight. PAC members, any PAC members have any questions for town staff? Brent?
Just through you, Mr. Chairman, last time this was before PAC, there was a lot of discussion about the extension on to Means Cove Road, and I know there's significant geographical limitations there. Was there any more discussion on that, Dwight, when this came back? Or
there has been, through you, Mr. Chair, there's been a recent recent initial high-level conversations about bringing those discussions back. It's recognized that now to go beyond this particular development, that's going to have to be put in place. So looking at that extension into the Means Cove Road area, just because once you get into the remnant parcel, obviously now you're starting to again add more additional traffic on Kane Road in that particular area. So we really need to look at how are we ultimately connecting to Means Cove Road before further development takes place. So yeah, there is some initial conversations around that subsequent to the submission of this particular tentative plan, recognizing that this is an item that will need to be addressed and just trying to get something on the ground. When I say on the ground, in terms of a plan so that we can move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions from staff or from PAC to staff? None being, would someone put a motion for or against terms and conditions, please? Brent?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion. The Planning Advisory Committee support the development officer in the decision of approval for the Ganella Point Phase 12B, subject to 1, the assent of council and execution of a standard development agreement for Phase 12B. 2, lot width variance for lots 18-C and 19-C in the amounts of lot 18-C 0.5 meters, lot 19C again 0.5 meters. 3, approving the proposed street extension of Sheraton Drive. And 4, other conditions of the previous approval remain in effect as detailed in the notice of decision dated July 16, 2001 and September 9th, 2021.
Thank you, Brent. Have a seconder on that? Mark?
Second.
Any further debate in that motion? None being, we have a vote, please. Motion carried unanimously, 5-0. Assuming Dwight, you'll get all documentation in place for that presentation to get council's assent. Thank you. That being, we'll move on to item 7F, Hamel Drive, Developments, Limited Subdivision. Could the applicant please come up to the podium? Dwight, you want to introduce this item for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Hamel Drive Developments Limited Subdivision is subdivision application that looks to create, in this particular case, access into this particular development. As PAC, some members of PAC may recall, this has been an application, and as noted in my staff report, development that's been around for many, many years. And previously it was under Master Enterprises, and now subsequent to that it's been purchased by new developers who were before council last year to seek amendments to the existing development agreement. It is a Section 59 development agreement, as this is an integrated development, which is a mixed use of townhouse style residential as well as apartment complex throughout the development. So the developers have reached a stage where they wish to move forward with actually providing public street access into the development. The staff report that's before the Planning Advisory Committee is addressed 2 phases, Phase 1A and Phase 1B. Phase 1A being that portion that comes off of Swanton Drive into provide access into the apartment building. And 1B is coming off Milliken Drive, which is providing access into eventually 10 dwelling units. So those are semi-detached. As with any subdivision plan that proposes the creation of public streets, then it needs to go to PAC for their recommendations and review prior to going to council for assent. The area is serviced by municipal water, municipal sewer. The total number of units that's going to be created in this area is, I believe, 124, 125. That's the result of an amendment that was approved by council and last year. So this is the first steps in terms of actually putting, shovel in the ground and concrete to build these structures. I guess what's of note would be land for public purposes in this particular application is going to be in the area that's abutting Route 119, as highlighted on the screen, outlined in green. It would be for stormwater management in that particular area. Potentially maybe some trail connection through there, yet to be determined. However, it's ultimately sort of an open green space with water attenuation, which has been always proposed as part of this development and accepted throughout the course of the development's life. So at this point in time, simply looking for PAC's review of the proposed subdivision plans, any recommendations that you might have prior to council assent, taking to council for assent. One final note is in the development agreement, you're noticing that is actually two separate sections, so one on one end, one on the other. The development does require, again, a connection between those two portions. Again, 6 meter wide, typical driving surface, so that in the event emergency services comes to one end and they actually need to go to the other, they don't have to go all the way around. You can actually skirt through and make the connection. That's clearly outlined in the development agreement that's registered against the property. So with that, I will open to any questions.
Could the applicant please state your name for the record, please?
Brad Lockhart.
Brad Lockhart. Mr. Lockhart, you would receive the same package we did in the mail. Anything you'd like to discuss prior to members of the PAC or the public asking you questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Any members of PAC have any questions for the applicant? None being, is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Is there anyone in the audience or online willing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, is there anyone in the audience willing to speak for or against this item? None being, would a member of PAC like to put a motion for or against with terms and conditions, please? Mr. Bishop.
I'll put a motion forward that PAC approve the recommended approval of Hamel Drive Developments Limited Phase 1A and Phase 1B subdivision plans subject to following terms and conditions. One, the assent of council and the execution of a standard developers agreement for both Phase 1A and Phase 1B. Two, the developer must construct emergency access connecting Hamel Drive, and the developer shall be responsible to maintain the access until such time is constructed to the municipal standard and vested to the town. Three, land for public purpose for both Phase 1A and Phase 1B to be satisfied through land dedication for stormwater management and open green space. And four, all other conditions of the previous notice of decision of June 2022 as it relates to the Section 59 development agreement shall remain in effect.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Can I have a seconder on that? Mr. Guest?
I'll second that.
Any debate in that motion? None being, can we have a vote, please? Motion carried. In 5 to 7 business days, you have a letter in the mail with your approval, so please work with the town to have all necessary documentation and everything in place.
Right.
Best of luck. Going on there now, is that just you're filling in that, doing the sanitary?
No, I was doing the berm, the stormwater management.
Stormwater manager for the berm, okay, perfect, yep. Just notice that down there.
70% done now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, good luck, thank you. Item 8. That was with our request. Sorry, that was with our request to talk about fencing, and if anyone read that, it looks like the town council has left it as is and to become based on what PAC decides. Huh? Basically, yep. So with that being, can I have a motion to receive and file? Mr. Goslin.
So move.
Can I have a second on that? Mr. Guest?
I'll second that.
Have a vote in that? Motion carried unanimously. Move on to item 9, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Bishop?
So moved.
Can I have a seconder on that? Mr. Guest?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the remainder of August and see you in September.